This time of year was famously described by the Hampstead poet John Keats as the season of mists and mellow fruitfulness. Whilst we may not have Keats' poetic gifts, we too can experience the loveliness of this season. Even a foggy day can give us the gift, if we slow down enough to notice it, of dewdrops on a spider's web, looking like tiny diamonds. Apparently, it's all down to surface tension and capillary action. But whatever the scientific basis, it gives us a view of the astonishing beauty of the created world and the miracle of the spider's web with its woven silk and tensile strength. The complexity and beauty of woven webs was reflected in ancient Greek mythology. Weaving was associated with the feminine, and so with the myths of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, who was patron saint of spinning and weaving. Her pupil, Arachne, challenged her to a weaving contest to produce a tapestry. Unsurprisingly, Athene won the competition, and Arachne, in despair, hung herself. The goddess took pity on her and turned her into a spider, the meaning of her name, and a tribute to her skill in weaving. Weaving as a skill has been associated with women since ancient times. The thread of life itself was spun on the distaff by the three fates who control destiny. To this day, we talk about spinning a yarn, and storytellers have long been admired for their gifts in weaving together a narrative. Perhaps our attraction to making stitched embroidery is its ability to tell a story without words. Next time you walk through the Sampson family concourse, it's worth taking time to admire the astonishing embroidery made by the Women's Guild in honour of our 150th anniversary in 1990. Look closely, and you will also see the initials of some of the women involved, stitched into the stones at the base of the Tree of Life. Naomi Robbins chose as their central image the Tree of Life, inspired by the stained glass windows in the sanctuary. It became a project for the whole community. Even the rabbis Hugo Grin and Bob Shafritz, of blessed memory, did some stitches. Though it wasn't the intention of the project, some family disputes got resolved whilst they sat and stitched and chatted together to make something for the 150th anniversary. Whatever their background or age, by working together on something special, the stitchers put the unity and community for that special year. Their work marked 150 years since our founders formed the West London Synagogue of British Jews in 1840. Like the founding families whose names are all around this sanctuary, the stitchers wanted to give something of beauty to the community they loved. Our Victorian founders also saw their Reformed synagogue's mission as stitching it in firmly into the web of philanthropic obligations that stretched right across London. To this day, there is a fountain beside St. Botolph without Aldgate, dedicated to the memory of Frederick David McAtter, who supported East End institutions, including hospitals and housing projects. Another representative of a founding family, Sir Francis Goldsmith, was not only an MP, he was also a supporter of University College Hospital. His brother Frederick was a leading member of an organisation called the Metropolitan Association for Improving the Dwellings of the Labouring Classes. They knew that religious practice was only meaningful if it was combined with a commitment to social justice. Otherwise, it deteriorates into being nothing but outward show. That is why on Yom Kippur we read the fiery Haftarah from 2nd Isaiah. The prophet criticizes his community for meaningless fasting. That's just a performative imitation of true religion. He says this of the fasting ritual's purpose. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and that you bring the poor who are cast out to your house? When you see the naked, that you cover him, and that you hide yourself not from your own flesh. That focus on how to live a good Jewish life by helping those in need is stitched into the very fabric of Jewish living. The Midrash on Psalms, written around 1500 years after 2nd Isaiah, addresses this very question of how a Jew should live a good and ethical life. It says this: when you are asked in the world to come, what was your work? And you answer, I fed the hungry. You will be told, this is the gate of the eternal, enter into it, you who have fed the hungry. Caring for those in need was second nature to Jewish communities throughout history. The Talmud in Tractate Peah mandates the setting up of a kupah, a kind of charitable fund, and the tamchui, a sort of soup kitchen, when poor from the wider world could get sustenance. The Jerusalem Talmud mandates the compassionate treatment of those in need, whatever their background, when it says this: one provides for the Gentile and Jewish poor, visits Gentile and Jewish sick, buries Gentile and Jewish dead, and consoles Gentile and Jewish mourners. The reason given is mipnei darchei shalom, for the sake of peaceful coexistence. As long ago as the Jerusalem Talmud, redacted around the year 400 CE, its authors knew that their Jewish community was part of a web of relationships that encompassed their whole city. More than that, they had a commitment to building connections that ensured that the poor and needy were stitched into the fabric of society in a way that respected their dignity and gave them hope for a better future. Our own founding families were profoundly aware of being stitched into the tapestry of Victorian London in a way that meant they knew they had a responsibility to care for those in need, especially in the areas of poverty alleviation and housing needs. How then do we, as inheritors of that tradition, make sure that the poorest in our society don't fall between the strands of the web of welfare provision? We are honoured that West London Synagogue has a first-class reputation in the city of Westminster for fulfilling that religious obligation to feed the hungry and care for those who have no roof over their heads. Our family drop-in for those seeking asylum now meets in St. John's Church, thanks to the generous welcome of Reverend Steve Mason and his team. They also hold sacred that prophetic imperative of Isaiah, to feed the hungry and welcome those in need into their home. And so our family drop-in also builds good interfaith relationships. The family is often living in one room with limited access to safe space or fresh food, are given a hot meal prepared in the West London kitchen and taken to the church, as well as a table for children's activities and toiletries, nappies and feminine hygiene products. There is such a need for our drop-in services that the families are split into two groups and only attend every other month. Central to our West London team of volunteers is the commitment to welcome our guests, treat them with dignity, and allow them the literal and metaphorical space to find what they need. That is even more important for our rainbow drop-in for LGBTQ+ asylum seekers that's now returned to meet here in the synagogue. We have asylum seekers and refugees from 14 different countries across Africa, Asia, and Central America. They support each other, knowing that they have all fled their own countries in fear of the hostility and persecution from the authorities there to those who are LGBT+. To welcome these people into our synagogue home restores their dignity and enables them to feel whole once again. Their stories are deeply moving, and the courage they have shown is very impressive. Once they meet here at the Rainbow Drop-In, they support each other in their personal journeys as refugees, sadly aware that return to their countries of origin would endanger their very lives. We Jews know the pain of being a refugee and the disorientation of learning how to live in a new country. So many of us have family stories of those who risked all to escape pogroms in Tsarist Russia to a place of safety in the UK. No surprise then that not so many years later, our community welcomed the Jewish refugee children who'd made it out of Nazi Germany at the end of the war. A West London member, Sir Benjamin Drage, gave his country house as a home to the traumatized children who were cherished by the redoubtable Alice Goldberger. Many of them came up to a religion school here in the synagogue. And Zdenka Husel, who's still a member, told me how hard it is for her to sit in the pews and look up at the dome, knowing that the money collected to repair bomb damage was used instead to rescue her and her friends. We keep the dome plain to remind us that human lives matter more than anything else. And yet one of the psalms written around the dome in Hebrew says, "Worship the eternal in the beauty of holiness." What we have learned at West London Synagogue is that the beauty of holiness is not only this lovely building with its stunning stained glass windows, it is also bringing that holiness into the web of connections that build a Kehillah Kadosha, a holy congregation. The stitched embroidery in the concourse celebrated friendship and built connections for our 150th birthday in 1990. But the interwoven connections that build unity and community go outside of this building to stitch into our civic life those who need our support, who come here as refugees and asylum seekers. That is the contribution of our generation, just as our founders supported those in need in the East End. So we can volunteer to help restore the dignity and sense of having a place where they truly matter to those who need us to fulfill the words of the prophet Isaiah, to feed the hungry and bring the needy into our religious home. So if you're planning to make a New Year's resolution, let it be to volunteer for our family drop-in and be part of fulfilling the Jewish obligation for Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may such be the divine will. Amen.